Region, and I think we can start. Uh, okay, so as most of you have already worked on um, collecting some literature related to the topic which we already discussed, I went through all the reports. Most of them were okay. The formatting was slightly different for almost every student. I also realized that most of the students, when they searched those keywords, quite similar articles appeared in their search box, and they reported similar articles as well. This is good in a way that it shows coherence and the standard methodology which everybody is following. And if you follow that methodology, almost everyone will land on some similar documents or similar research papers, or the ones which come up on the top. The slightly bad thing in that is that it only gives you a very limited perspective. So if you want to search for some other literature, some other areas, then you might have to change your search engine, or you have to look for resources at some other places or things like this. So yeah, the first assignment was that you have to understand how to search for and how to collect literature. Today is quite an interesting thing which we want to discuss, and that is how to write a technical report. Hello? Hello? Okay. Yeah, it's okay. So today, what we will do is we will try to see how to write a technical report. In the end, what I would like is I would want to give you an assignment. So basically, it would be a 2 weeks task where you will have to produce a technical report, and you will be evaluated based on that technical report. But today you can take your notebooks and your writing instruments out, and you can start taking notes, because today we will be discussing a lot of things on what are the best practices, how to write a technical report, and yeah, how you would be doing that. So if I start with the basics. So initially, you also would have read a lot of research papers as you did your homework last time. So you went through a lot of documents, you saw a standard structure, a standard format, and let's break it down into its steps. Usually what you do is you see title of the article. So let me fix a few things. Okay, this title usually is inclusive, is brief. So it should be inclusive, large enough that it captures everything which has been done. It should be brief, small enough so it is not an essay, it is filled in 1 or 2 lines, and is catchy. So presents the research or the technical report which you have done in an interesting, with an interesting choice of words. So that is also important. Then one thing which you usually see is a list of authors below the title of the article. So it usually is large contributors to the work. There can be some minor contributors to the work, and usually what happens is that they are usually mentioned in the acknowledgement section and not are the co-authors. And then what we have is their affiliations. So what are the current affiliations of the authors, who are the main authors. So this gives you a perspective of where the research is originating from. And this is usually the information which you always get on the very first glimpse of the article. So what is the title of the article and who are the authors? Then what you usually see is the abstract of the article. We will come to it later. What we also see is keywords. This is also something which we will come to later, come back to it later. Then what is there? The next section is introduction. This is also something which we will come back later. And then is the main body of the article. So and this is where you start your work. So what is the main thing which the article is covering? So if it is a research paper, what a body will comprise of is methodology. So let's write, if it is a research paper, then it will be so tools, methodology, or experimentation. So what tools did we use, what methodology did we adopt, what kind of experiments were done, or anything like that. Or it can be modeling, if it is related to any kind of modeling. So if it is a research paper, then in main article body we will start with what are the tools which we use, the methodology, experimentation, and modeling. And this is something which we usually always know. And after this we write results. So what results did we get? And then these results can also, for example, these tools or methodology can also be subdivided into other different sections. So let's say material, preparation, testing, and maybe post-processing, or something else now. And then the results section will also comprise of, for example, results of different sorts. So let's say if we are talking about for mobility, we will say forming microstructure, loads, and so on and so on. So basically any kinds of results which we have accumulated in this research. Then if it is not a research paper, then this would be something different. For example, the assignment which we would want to do now would be related to not original research paper, but rather collecting data from other articles and then writing a report on what do you understand from all that. No? So then if it is report, then what we do is we start with for example one topic. So how does the title would be effect of blah blah blah, or analysis of blah blah blah, something something, and the list will go on and on and on, and we will basically comprehend all our results in different sections which are related to something. For example, we can write the effect of temperature on formability, of analysis of formability limits, the microstructural attributes, and in those sections we will only talk about those specific things, and so on and so on. And once you're done with main body of the article, then usually comes the results section if it is a research paper, and if it is a review report, then basically you are already presenting results, so there is no specific results section. And what we usually do is we start with the discussion section of the article. How we are doing it? Okay. And in the discussion section of the article, what we are always doing is we are trying to develop the efficacy of the, let's make it this, of the obtained results by checking in with challenges and limitations of the study, by mentioning key objectives which were achieved, and by providing outlook on how the methods, techniques, tools can be used, and what can be done next. And we are doing all this based on an interesting we are doing all no so we are doing all this by keeping in light of the previously published work. So what the people have reported before, and how we want to what results did we get, and how we can make it better. Keeping in light of the previously published work, and this we can review. I can delete this comment. Okay. After the discussion section, what we do is that we want to conclude our study, and what we do in the conclusions is that we write key objectively stated findings. Now, usually a good practice always is to start with the main body of the article, and then from the main body of the article you usually get general points of discussion, general points of conclusion when you're writing results, of course, and so on and so on. And then we come back to this section, which is in the beginning, and then the important thing is introduction. So introduction is as you know, background of the work which is currently of the topic which is currently being addressed. It is also, so basically, if I'm talking about formability, I will start with why formability is important, and then we can talk about the state of the art in several paragraphs of sorry in several paragraphs of what people have done to address formability of different materials and how well the results were and what did they achieve and so on and so on, in an interesting way, which connects with the next thing, which is identification of the gap. So what did they do and what were they getting, but when we want to find a solution to a certain problem, we cannot find it in the current work, and therefore this is the gap which needs to be addressed. And from this gap we come up with a problem statement, which would be that this gap is an important thing to address this specific issue, but as it has not been done previously or not has been addressed appropriately, this needs to be addressed. So this would be the problem statement of the current work. And then in the last paragraph of the introduction, what we usually do is, regarding that problem statement, what have we done to address the problem statement, and we also want to mention where did we do it. So usually what we do is we mention that we did this, which is provided in in this section, we did this, which is provided in this section, and then the results are discussed, which are provided in this section, and then the results have been compared with the already published research, and a nice observation has been made, which is mentioned in this section, and eventually the study has been concluded in this section. So this is the last paragraph of the introduction. So a reader would understand the background, what is the current state of the art, why this research was being done, what was the identified gap, and then what the authors are trying to address in this identified gap and how they are trying to address it. So this is basically the introduction. When we are done with the introduction and we have a basic general understanding of how our research was going through, then we come towards this topic. So then we would like to basically write the title of the article, which, as we discussed before, is conclusive, brief, and catchy. Then we would also know the list of authors who contributed largely throughout this article, and then we want to specifically write a very short summary of the whole research. And this is quite important because usually, of course, this is something which you would have done as well when you were skimming through the articles and were reading out. So basically what we usually do is, when we write in the keywords, we get the title of the article, and if we find that interesting, we click on it, and then we always find abstract of the article in front of us. An abstract of the article is a very short summary of what was done, and from there we decide if we want to read this whole article or not. So there should be some specific things which should be accurately, appropriately addressed in the abstract, which are what was done, the first thing. Then the next thing is, how was it done? Then the next thing is, what did the authors get, and what was the quality of the results which they achieved, or how good were the results. And this addressing only these topics, so what did you do, how did you do it, what did you get, and what was the quality of what you got, is specifically which very briefly summarizes the whole article, and the readers who are coming to read it would know if they want to read further, or the methodology or the technique or the tool or something else is not as they expected and they do not want to invest more time there. So this should be precise, accurate, and should address all these points. And then comes the keyword section. So the keyword section is important for search engine optimization. The title of the article, abstract of the article, and keywords are important points to optimize your article for the search engine. So for example, if someone is writing formability of aluminum alloys, just if somebody is just writing this, what will come up on the top? This depends on so many factors, but it mostly depends on your choice of the title, the words which are used in the abstract, how frequently they are used, and what is the connection between the words, and then more specifically, what are the keywords that were chosen. So the best practice for the keywords is that they should be relevant, but they should not be precisely exactly those words which are already mentioned in the title of the article or in the abstract of the article, but maybe synonyms or slightly different words. So you stretch your window of keywords which a search engine would search for while skimming the article and then presenting it in front of the reader. So the keywords are usually depending on the journal, depending on the publisher, they can be different, but usually we start with 5. So there should be at least 5 keywords. Some publishers allow more, some publishers allow only 5 or something like this. So once we are done with this, and when we were writing the article, what we usually do is, as I already mentioned, so what we have is that after the conclusion section, we have a small section which is called acknowledgements. So this is an important section where you acknowledge the support of all the people who help you with carrying out this research. It can be a funding organization, it can be some people in the laboratory, it can be someone advising you to plot the data in a certain way or anything like that. So yeah, but it is an important section where you mention all the acknowledgements, and then comes the section of references. And when you're writing the article, you're writing the introduction, you are basically citing people who you're citing the existing knowledge, and the list is already and you make the list here. Now there is a very bad way of doing it manually. Now there are currently many citation managers available. I personally use EndNote, but our university offers Citavi, and many people are using that as well. So it just depends on which tool you're comfortable with, and then you can use that to make your bibliography here. So we have in the acknowledgement section, we acknowledge all the resources, people, and anyone or anything who helped with the work. And then this is where bibliography is written. And then for example, also if you have some other sections which are, for example, some secondary data, then appendices or appendix So if you want to do not mention some data set or some table or some equations or some charts in the main article, or you want to give some further information about a graph, or how did you make that a methodology which does not fix in the story of the article but is important to understand it, then basically we give that information in the appendix. So secondary information which does not fit in the article story but is helpful for understanding it. So this is something which we mention here. And yeah, so that is generally the overall structure. An important thing which is what I usually see is mentioning page numbers. It is not very difficult, but it is very important to do that. You can just write normal page numbers, or the better one would be to use this structure, which shows that how many are the total pages of the document and which page number I am currently on. The important thing, the other points of interest are that the article, the language of the article should be simple, it should be clear, and it should be understandable. Do not try to write super long sentences, or do not try to use difficult words which will seem very technical. This is a bad practice. Try to use simple, clear, and understandable words. Another important thing is use of figures and tables. This is something which we will understand from another example which I have, which we will consult right now. But the figures should be clear, the text should be clearly understandable in all the figures, they should be properly labeled, so with captions said that which figure number is this, what is this figure number showing, which table is this, what is this table showing, and then those figures or tables should be subsequently also cited in the text. So if I am showing something in a figure, I also should mention it in the text that this thing is shown in the figure. So figures should not be there just to show something without highlighting where, to understand what concept or what idea this figure is made, or it is important. Then another thing, for example, if your article has a lot of abbreviations or symbols, then it is also a good practice to give a list of symbols or keywords, list of symbols or abbreviations after the keyword section, so before the introduction starts. So if somebody wants to understand what is PWRD, which you have mentioned in the article, or gamma or sigma, they can go back to this list and see what did you mean by this symbol or this abbreviation throughout the article. So while reading it, they are not lost. So list of abbreviations. So this is also important if your article has a lot of abbreviations. So there are two things in it, list of acronyms and list of symbols, which should be here. Okay. Then, for example, let's take a look at a sample. This is one article which we recently published. So now if you will look at the overall structure which we made in the other document, let's put it here and let's put this here. So I said that initially you have title of the article, which should be inclusive, brief, and catchy. There you see the title of the article, and below this is list of authors and their affiliations. Then comes the abstract, and this abstract covers everything. So what was done, how was it done, what did the authors get, and what was the quality of the results that the authors get. And then we have keywords. Here I think we have slightly more than 5, but the journal allowed it. And then we start with the introduction section. Here the list of abbreviations for this publisher was explicitly asked to be mentioned at the end of the article now. So we mention it here rather than in the beginning. Usually it is in the beginning. And then we start with the introduction. So we start with what is the background, what is the state of the art, and then identification of the gap, and in the end we mention what was done and where it is stated in every section. And then we start with main body of the article. So main body of the article, for example, here you can see that we start with, in the main body of the article, we start with what would you do first, and then also it is important to understand that what is the difference between providing data in a tabular way and providing data in a graphical way. Usually if there are trends to show, we can always show the graphs or plots in a tabular way, but that is not a very convenient way of understanding data. So whenever we have a very random data set individually for specific numbers, and it is relatively random, and it makes more sense to put it in table only, then we use tables. Otherwise we try always to show data in the form of a figure. For example, here in despite of explaining all this methodology in the text, we also made a block diagram here to show the methodology which we used for doing everything which we did. And then, for example, we are showing the figures, well constructed, well labeled figures, and also explaining them in the text. So how did we do it? How did we do what we did? The equations should be properly numbered, and for example, anything which you have received from previously published literature or anything should be appropriately cited or referred to. So there is no bad practice of plagiarism or anything. So the data which is yours should be clearly mentioned, and the data which you have used from other publications should also be clearly mentioned, so there is no confusion of what is yours and what isn't. And then, for example, if we have multiple figures, we can see that we have to label them appropriately, and in the caption we also mention what each figure is representing. And then every figure which we provide should also be mentioned in the text. So what does this figure help explaining? And yeah, generally, so all the figures should have the text or the features which are clearly visible and clearly understandable for a normal print. The text should not be too large or too small, so it should mix well with the rest of the article body. For example, this figure can be taken as a slightly bad example of how a figure should not look like, but to compare with, for example, this is the text quite is too small when we compare it with this text size, but we didn't have any option of putting this figure in a even bigger way because it is a very big figure. So yeah, and generally this is what. And then, for example, after explaining how, if we go back, so after explaining why we are doing everything, then we discussed what results are we getting, and then we also discussed and then we are writing specifically a discussion section of explaining all the results together with the previously published literature on what is the eventual outcome. So what is the total complete understanding of this work? And in the end, we conclude this research with concluding remarks. We have, and then we provide acknowledgements. The other things, other contributions, funding, conflicts of interest, this is something which usually different authors or publishers ask for, and then you supply them depending on it. So basically we also had some information which was not fitting well with the article story, but was important to understand what is happening. So we have mentioned it in an appendix, and if you are mentioning something in appendix, it should also be mentioned in the text. So this is mentioned in the, so you clearly explain. So if you want to read more about it, it is available in the appendix. And then we have references, and eventually the document is finished. Okay, now the assignment for you guys is that you have to write a report on how do the microstructural attributes affect the deformation and damage behavior of particle-based metal matrix composites. This is something which you have already collected your literature about, and you already have some idea about what is happening. So when you are collecting almost 10 research papers, and usually many of the students also collected some of the review articles, so you already have an idea of what the spectrum of the study is all about. So what we want is we want you to produce a report on how to do the microstructural attribute, on how do the microstructural attributes affect the deformation and damage behavior of particle-based metal matrix composites. This is not a title of the report. So basically, if I give you a brief insight, it would be that different attributes influence. So for example, we have influence of the following. Composition, so how much percentage of particles or how much percentage of matrix we are getting. Type of matrix, what is the matrix material and what is the composition of that matrix material. Type of the inclusions, so what is the type and chemistry of the particles which we are using, and then size of the particles is also an influencing factor, and then the loading conditions can also influence the deformation and damage behavior. So if we are stretching it, compressing it, if we are bending it or anything like that, and then the shape of the particles can also influence it, and the next thing is distribution of the particles. Okay. So the first question is, are these things you are mentioning are for the writing an article? Should we write an article in the seminar course? Yes. So basically in seminar course there are two assignments. One is to understand how you collect appropriate literature according to your requirements, which most of the students, all the students who have registered have already submitted. And then the next assignment is to understand how to write the technical report with all its main components and everything. And this is the next assignment which we are discussing today, and what are we expecting and things like this. So yeah, you have to write an article. Could you please share this document with us? Of course I can share this documents with you. I will just have to see how I do that, but you will receive them. For now, it would be helpful if you just use your notepad and pencils to write and mention, write down everything. Okay, so generally this is something which I can remember of, which has influence on this deformation and damage behavior of particle-based metal matrix composites. There might be other things which you can find in the literature and you can always use. The idea is to produce a technical report with one or a few of these mentioning these attributes and how they affect the behavior. And you can do that by reading generally the articles which you have already collected, or by searching for more articles and finding more data. How can we write an article while we did not do anything? Okay, yeah. So that is the so this is what I'm trying to say here. Now the assignment is to do the microstructure attribute to see the effect of deformation and damage behavior of particle-based metal matrix composites. And how people have reported how these attributes influence the material deformation and damage behavior. Are the articles real or fake? They are real for you, they are fake for me. So we will not use them to publish them anywhere, but of course they are real in a way that your progress will be evaluated, and your understanding of, if you know how to write a technical report with all its main components, will be evaluated on that. Is there a word limit for the article for assignment or reference limitation? No, but there is a component limitation. So it should basically comprise of all the main components, and it should make a coherent story. I would say do not make it large. Try to make it as small as possible in as less pages as you can. I would expect 5 to 8 pages per student. So basically it briefly comprises of the introduction, and then the main body of the article would not be experimentation and results or so on and so on. It would be what did you understand, so what people have reported on how a certain attribute affects the deformation and damage behavior, and then basically you will discuss it there in the same article, in the same place, and then you will conclude your article that this is my understanding of how these things are affecting it. And in the end there should be a bibliography, and it should be basically a complete report. Just showing the trend of an article. Though I did not understand what you mean by that. Faizan Ali is writing, what about plagiarism? So what about plagiarism? The question itself is a question. Can you please explain it more? So we have to select one article and find the influence of that particular article. No. So basically your assignment is this. So you have to go through the literature and understand this, and then write a technical report about it. Now, these are some of the helping keywords. So when I say microstructural attributes, there are so many which affect so many things, and then you will feel lost. So you can choose one or two or a few of these, and then you can write subsections about, for example, how do the composition affect the damage and formability of particle-based metal matrix composites? How does type of inclusion affect that? How does the distribution of the particles affect that? And then you can use figures, and then you can use supporting data from those articles which you have read to make your story promising. And that is the technical report which you have to submit. I hope you understand it now. We should use other article results. Yes, you of course you will be using data which has been reported in other articles. That is the assignment about. And then the question was, what about plagiarism? Of course, when you're using data from other articles, you have to appropriately cite and address that this is something which I am using from this article, and this is something which I'm using from this article. So yeah, that is what is needed. Of course, it is not original research, it is just a technical report writing exercise where you will try to find appropriate literature, go through it, understand the main concept, use that for your benefit, and mention it in your story. But while doing that, as we discussed here, how to write it and what are we expecting here, please use this. Okay, the deadline for this report submission is 8th of next month. So we have 1, 2, 3. So we have basically 1 week, 2 weeks, and 3 weeks to submit this report. And by 8 in the evening, this report should be submitted on the portal. And now all the students who have already registered for this course are already part of the portal, and now they should be it should be easy for you to submit this report online now. And then this will be evaluated and this will be returned. So and after that you will have your final seminar of this subject. One thing which I find helpful, some points which I collected, which I would like to mention here is how to write a report. So these are generally the practices around it. So now you understand the basic main components, but usually when you start writing with a blank paper, it is always difficult to put words there or make an interesting story. So these are some points which I would like to mention here or explain here. But before that, let me answer the questions. What are the numbers in the square brackets in the sample paper you just showed? A very interesting question. Is it going to be an individual task, or are we supposed to do it in groups? It is an individual task, so each of you has to report an individual report. What are the numbers in the square brackets in the sample paper you just showed? Oh my. Okay. So basically you mean this You mean this? For example, let's take an interesting example here. I would have. Okay, so the sentence written here is parameters for Ferret and Martensite are adopted from literature. And then there is this word 45 in the square brackets, and this 45 is a type of how we cite papers. So for example, here it is written 45, and with this corresponding 45 we go in this section of references, and this is 45. So when I say that I use these values from literature, so when I say that I use these files from this data from literature, what I mean is that from this literature. So not generally from anywhere, but specifically from here. So this is what these numbers in the square bracket signify, and everything here. So for example, if I show that stability and convergence rate as was earlier shown by Michel, so Michel probably would have written so many articles, but specifically from Michel's this article, which is this one. So this is what the numbers signify. And this is also something which you will practice, because when you will write that, for example, this person said that with increasing particle size this happens. So when you're writing that, you will also mention a certain number in the bracket, and then you will also mention that in the bibliography of, so that it can be correlated. Crossref is something which the publisher is using. So if I move up, you already see that it shows a link. So Crossref means that I can click on it and it will go to the website which hosts this article. So now the publishers are using this more and more often to include transparency and provide data to as many people as possible. So basically this is something which is not needed. Try to keep it simple. Try not to mimic this, because this is a very formatted version of the article. Try to write it in a simple document. Then, for example, when you will start writing, there are certain limiting beliefs which usually we have, and that is that only if I could find a big block of time, then I would write, because it is a big report. It will need a lot of time to write, and then only if I can find that, I can start writing. And this is basically a limiting belief, which is not true. So instead of finding time, it is suggested that allot time to write. So I will write, so just fix time for writing a report a little bit, rather than finding a lot of time somewhere. I need to do more work, read more work before I can start writing. So this is usually something which will happen with you. So whenever you will start writing, you will write one sentence or two sentences, and then you'll think that I do not know much. So instead of writing, maybe I should try to find more papers. I should try to download them. This is something which I cannot find or download. I should ask someone to download it for me, and only then, when I will have 50, 60 or 80 papers, only then I will start writing. So and this is something which will always move you away from writing a document. So writing is more than typing words. If you're reading, that is part of writing. If you're working, that is part of typing. Organizing, outlining, brainstorming, doodling is all part of writing, and this goes in the document. I need better tools to write more. So if I do not have this article, if our library does not give it access to this article, if I do not have an appropriate computer or a place to sit, I cannot write. Usually the thing is, the less is better with everything. I am waiting until I feel like it. So I'm not feeling like writing. When I will feel it, I will write it very soon. And what is always said is that bad writing is a million times better than no writing at all. Um, and yeah, and there are many quotes like this as well. Let me finish this first and then I will write. So let me finish this task first, let me take these lectures first, let me do my home chores first and then I will write, is something which you will always find and will never be able to write the report. So schedule time for writing like we do for anything else. And basically, so only if I could find a big block of time and let me finish this and then I will write first, are quite connected. So it is always a better idea to schedule. So for example, if you have 3 weeks, make a plan that you have to finish a report and finish the first draft of the report in 1 or 1.5 weeks, and then you can read it and then slowly add more data to it, and by the time you will have your deadline approaching, you will have a very nice finished report. And if you will just keep collecting data and you will only start writing 2 or 3 days before the deadline, the report will be very abrupt. You will not feel happy when you will be submitting the report, and of course that will also affect the results and the outcome. Then there are several steps to writing with speed, and when I say writing with speed, it does not mean that crappy writing. It always means that you are producing good quality work in optimal time rather than wasting a lot of time around it. So and very important advice which I understood after a very long time was, do not write final version first. So usually when we start writing and when we are struck with the title of the article, we just want to write the very final line on the top of the page, and that is something where our mind is struck. So we write something, we will delete it, or we will keep thinking about it, and we will never move forward. And that is a very helpful advice, that do not write final version first. Just write whatever comes in your mind, fill the pages, and then it is always easier to delete than add new words. So the main points are, do not try to be perfect from the very first sentence you write on the blank page. Give yourself space and room for error. Of course, if you will have time later, you will always be able to correct those errors. And keep it casual in the beginning. So if you have a picture of something, you can add there. If you have any comments, you can add there. If you want to write abrupt sentences, just use those. If you want to write keywords, just use those. Whatever comes to your mind, just keep adding there, rather than writing very final sentences, because that will lead you nowhere. Understand main parts of the scientific research paper. This is something which we discussed before. So rather than starting with the title, abstract, keywords, and introduction, rather than doing that, we already discussed it in the beginning of this seminar. Start from problem statement. So what is something which I'm trying to address? Start with the methodology, which we already know. So how did I address this problem? What did I do? How many samples did I test? What results did I get? And for example, for your case, the problem statement would be that we want to understand from the literature that what is the effect of this or this on the deformation and formability, on the damage and formability of particle-based mathematics composites, and this is something which you want to understand. So this is a problem statement, and then the body of the article would be that this person reported that it has this effect, this person reported that it's this effect, and so on and so on, and eventually you will have data to churn through and produce fine results and compare things and see things through. So this person is reporting that changing this attribute affects it in a positive way, but this researcher is reporting that changing it in this way affects it negatively. So these are conflicting remarks and how to go around them. So this is something which you will see only after you have collected appropriate data. And once you have done that, once you have written results, only then write the introduction section. So what is the background, whatever the people reported, and then you will be able to discuss it. with respect to the discussion section. So these are basically the points which I wrote for the technical report writing, the original research articles, and these are the parts of that. But yeah, they're helpful. And in the end, we are writing the abstract keywords title, and in the very end, we are writing authors, because only then we know that who were the main contributors. Start with the end in mind. So when you are, as we said in the last lecture, that when you are trying to find the papers, when you're trying to search for them, reading the titles or the abstracts, try to keep it in mind that you will have to produce a technical report out of them. This is what we mean by start with the end in mind. So name the documents, put them in a certain folder, add comments to them, with this idea in mind that I will have to use them in the future, and if they are not properly placed, mentioned, and if I'm just haphazardly doing something today and haphazardly doing something tomorrow, eventually it will not converge itself. I will have to do the work again. And then consistently log data in a document while you are working. Whenever you're reading a document, open a blank page on the side. Whatever you're reading, whatever you are finding interesting, just keep writing there, rather than thinking that, okay, when I will finish these 4 or 5 articles first and then I will write those points in the main document. It will never help you with that. You will always have to read those documents again. Construct outline of the paper first, as we discussed here. So basically, what I usually do is when I start working, I usually have this kind of outline in front of me. So for example, I start with this main body of the article, and whatever ideas or points are coming in my mind which are related to other sections, I just mention them quickly there. So this helps me with keeping data organized in the main document. Where did it go? Construct good interactive figures which tell a story. So if you have your data and you are constructing it in a nice way, already half of the story is already finished there in your mind on that figure. The next thing which only is remaining is that you only have to explain that to the reader. Transform the rough document to V1. So now once you have all those keywords, all those long sentences, some paragraphs, some doodling, some figures, everything there, we call it the version 0. So this is something, a very long document with generally random data. Then you can read through the document to make all the changes. You can slowly go through all the sections. You have a bigger picture in mind. Then you can cut, move, delete, add text to make sense of the whole document. And then also reading the document aloud, loudly in a room also helps you with structuring the sentences appropriately and making sense of it. And that would be the version 1 of the article now. So this is something which you will make, and then you will finalize the article by collecting feedback from co-authors. So you will share it with the other people who contributed. Maybe someone worked in the lab, someone helped you construct graphs, maybe someone was advising you on how to do it. But then when you are writing the whole document, then you're sharing it with them, and then they will give you feedback on what did you miss, what is not right, what can you improve in it. And then after incorporating all those changes, then your article is finalized, which you can share with the journal. And this is something which we expect that you will share with us, not the version 0 which we discussed here. So it is just main titles and then junk in between. So understand that it is important. What I have realized is that this methodology does not only help with writing fast, but also helps in producing really good quality work. These are basically the advices which I would give when you are relatively new to the writing, and you want to write a document. So these are some steps which you can, or advices which you can use to start from a blank page and produce a really nice report. Yeah, so with this, we are done here. So if you have any questions or any suggestions or any points which you want to clarify, you can write in the chat. I will be here for next 3 or 4 minutes, and yeah, and I will answer all your questions, and after that, if you do not have any, you can leave. I will try to find a way to share these documents with you so they're helpful.